Let's welcome in our co-hosts in this second hour of the program. He is the Admiral Bill Stubblefield.
Good morning, Rob. In my seat, ready to go.
We were scrambling for a second, but we're ready, aren't you, Bill?
That voice belongs to Maria Lawrenson. Welcome back, Maria.
Jason,
Happy
we were
to be
chastised.
Again, she didn't even get a chance to say hello. Interrupted without even getting a chance to respond with one word, hello.
Hello. Done.
Go ahead, Bill. I know
I
you're
was
just
going to say,
itching.
no. I thought she
itching.
had said hello. Jason, we were chastised last segment for not being ready to go. So this time we were prepared, ready to go.
Jason, you saw what happened. They were in some conversation about something, I don't know, and I just said 30 seconds, like, I guess we got to start paying attention to the show now. All right, fine.
Yeah, they were definitely not ready to go. You always got to be good with the host.
That's it.
Good
Amen.
job. Jason Baker, Ward 5 Councilman, City of Martinsburg. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You have some interesting travels recently?
I did. I was on a college visit for my son up in upstate New York. So that was, as him being I guess he's a rising junior is what they call him. So that's an exciting period. Yeah. Of course, it starts to make you feel a little bit old also, to feel like you're going in there. But it was good. I'd never been to that part of about an hour south of Rochester, so it was.
Was it just up 15?
Well, we yes, but we took a detour up to Niagara Falls before we came back down to the college.
Nice view.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice. I remember when we dropped my youngest son off at college. My oldest son went to community college. My youngest son went to four-year school. And when we dropped him off, you get done moving him in and all that good stuff. My wife cried. It was a 2-hour something minute drive. I think she cried for 2 hours and something minutes all the way home. Did you cry when you dropped your kids off?
Oh, my gosh, both times. And I have a friend, actually, Will was at Wheeling, so it was about 3.5 hours, and then my daughter was in Pittsburgh. So, but I had a friend who had been through it herself, and she called me, and we talked for about an hour's worth of the trip so that I wasn't, because for the record, let's just say that I did that solo, mostly because there wasn't enough room in the car for anybody else to. We were packed to the gills, especially with my daughter. But yeah, and I offered to go solo. So, but yeah, it's a very emotional time. So right?
It is. Even a little bit just to visit, you start. You
start
thinking
feeling,
about it.
Yeah, they're going to be gone, and
So you're telling me it doesn't get any easier?
No,
Okay.
not at all. And every year when they would pull out, yeah.
So if when you drop off next year, if you need someone to talk to on the drive home, you can call Maria.
You can call me, and I'll talk you through it.
Okay, I might take you up on that.
But mostly your wife, Jen, because that's it's her more than not that it wouldn't be you. I'm sure you're emotionally
How much
Walking, Maria.
confident. Yeah, I'm stopping. Let's talk about the city now. Let's go.
anymore? You're going to have to break out a copay on this one for the
Yeah,
time.
that's exactly right.
Jason, let's talk about these POTA districts in Martinsburg. The first time I came across something kind of similar to this was in the 80s when I was in New Orleans, the French Quarter. And you can take a drink out of one bar, you can walk around the city with it, and you go into another one, and you don't get harassed about it. And under limited circumstances, Martinsburg is incorporating a similar district.
They are. I think it's exciting. I think that, like we were just on travel, I was up in most places I was at, they were doing similar things. There were, it's becoming more and more common, getting away from, I guess the old term, the blue laws and stuff of really restricting stuff. And, I think that I had some concerns originally when we did the overlay. There was some problems. I thought, the railroad track was technically part of the district. We don't need the railroad tracks to be in there. Some stuff with the roundhouse, just because its property goes all the way out onto Liberty Street. We definitely we're not trying to make this area into residential area where into that. So some alterations to there, and I'm sure that over time that district will move its lines because hopefully our city grows, and hopefully as different neighborhoods that have commercial in different areas that they'll want to be part of it, and I think it's positive.
When will these districts be in play in regards to the ability to move around like that?
I think it's by the end of summer.
By the end of summer? And will that be on weekends only or every night of the week?
I think it's every night of the week. There's no restriction.
And if your business doesn't want to participate in that, I understand there's a sticker system you can put in your window.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And then also, of course, that also does not apply to residential housing that's in our downtown. I know that I had a couple constituents actually reach out to me because they were concerned just because of the proximity, not that Martinsburg's that big, just the proximity of Ward 5 to Ward 4. We have a lot of overlay area, and there were some concerns about, so now somebody can be standing on their sidewalk and drink. And I was like, no, that's not what this does. I said, it's the business, it's cups, it's to protect it, but it does not affect the residential.
And there is a specific cup that you get
Yes.
as part of this.
Yes.
Correct? All right. Anything else you want to ask about the POTA districts, Maria or Bill, before we move on to another topic?
No, I was ready to go to the other topic. Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Bill. I want to ask you about the mayor's State of the City speech last Thursday, your take from it, and any particular notes. Kevin will be on Friday morning, by the way, to address it in more detail, but your thoughts of it.
I'm glad that Kevin does that. I think it's a nice change from what we're doing to give out some information. He does a nice job of being proactive with that, and being pro city, which I think is important to get the information out. It gives you an idea of where our budget is, because you hear over $50 million budget, and and then you're like, oh, you can't pave my street, or you can't there, and it breaks it down to general fund, and then even inside the general fund, roughly $25 million in general fund. Even that's broken down to stuffs. And at the end of the day, we realistically, to be able to do on outside projects, probably only have, in a good year, $3 million, $3.5 million.
That include to do road work?
Well, yes, we use some HUD money sometimes to match funds with some of that, so that's not a fair thing with our budget. But if additional, because over the last, I think it's 3 years, for sure 2 years, we have put additional money from general fund to do other stuff in there, because HUD money has restrictions depending on what neighborhoods you can put it in. Sometimes, it's those things where, and anybody that's done a house repair knows this, okay, so you're going to go 90% doing the kitchen, but, well, there's a hole in the living room wall you're not going to fix while the contractor's in there. So we found some of that stuff in our paving, and some sidewalks and stuff that we've been able to fix and kind of clean up, and we got to do more. We're realistically, I don't want to quote him, but I'm pretty sure our city manager thinks that we probably should have $1.5 million, $2 million a year in paving budget just to catch back up and to be able to do what we need. It always takes money, but we're definitely financially, what cities always has been. We do what we're supposed to do. We pay our bills. When we have extra money, we do things that we can do.
Lambert Park Pool, and whether you foresee a split on Parks and Rec between city and county and cutting the schools out entirely.
I'll go to the pools. If I don't hit all your questions, please ask it again. But, of course, pools have opened. Lambert is doing wonderful. Open, operational. There was a few things early before the season, but the company that's now kind of opening and closing our pools probably should have been doing that 20 years ago. Not saying anything against the staff, but professionals that do it all the time, it makes a difference. Of course, attendance has been spotty.
It's because it's been raining for 40 days and 40 nights.
And cold and everything else. And but I was talking to Joe, and one thing he said
Joe Burton.
Yes. And there was actually, I think it was Wednesday. Don't quote me on the date, but I think it was Wednesday. They had to basically swim her out of the area, and they had to put on hold because they had so many people at the pool. Of course, that could be a lot of different reasons. Could be that they couldn't get in. It was the first good day. Those kinds of things. That would be a great sign for our pools, hopefully. I know one of the negative things that's happening with our pools or pool is now, I guess, the liner at War Memorial is leaking, which just probably means we're going to have to put all new. What means that we're going to be putting all new liners at War Memorial after the season.
And in regards to eventual possible split in Parks and Rec between city and county,
I don't necessarily foresee that happening. I think that we get good service as it's set right now. I think that as the county grows and their park system and what they offer in the south end or the north end, I think that as a city councilman, it will always be our responsibility to make sure that our service level for our residents is at a high level, and that and I'm only speaking for myself, but if that level ever changes where we are pulling or have to bus people from kids from the city out to Inwood or to North End, I would be opposed to that. And that would be probably that would be the thing that would be more likely for me as far as seeing a split of Parks and Recs is if they grow to a point where there's just repetitiveness and that we need to protect the city parks and the city services that we have. But I don't see that anywhere in the near future.
Nope.
Yeah, Jason, George Carish died last week, so 20 years as mayor, 25 years city council, so a lot of time spent with the city. Is there going to be any permanent recognition for George? Has that been discussed?
Has not been discussed with me. He does have a room namesaked for him at the police station. I am not a supporter of buildings, bridges, roads, parks being named after people. I kind of have always had this stance. I believe that, like in our parks, when we did the new park on East Burke Street, we named it the East Burke Street Park. And I actually think that it makes more sense to name things directional, and it's better for us to do those kinds of things, and it gets cumbersome. And it's not anything. I have all the respect in George, and I served with him a while. My dad and my brother both served with him, so it's not in particular. Me personally have always just had a stance that we should not name things after people.
I can appreciate that, but the other side is a lot of things are named for people. Frequently the name for people that the object's been named for and the individual, there's very little connection between the two. In George's case, though, if it had not been for George, the Raleigh Street extension would not have happened. He was the champion for that for 20, 25 years, and he literally made it happen. I, for one, would like to see something like the Raleigh Street extension named for George, because I think it's deserving. I think there's reason for that. But I understand your take on all this.
I have to say, just as someone who was involved in when I worked in the school system in Jefferson County, we had several schools that were named after people, and I was there at the time that T.A. Lowry was built, and we had a contest, and certainly the Lowry name is very well known in Jefferson County, but you kind of wonder generations down the pike how, part of it is how you keep the memory of the person alive and make people understand that T.A. Lowry School was named after Ted Lowry, who was a superintendent and all of that. So I think something similar with George, might be might be in line. So.
Yeah, we had another example though, and that's Foxcroft Avenue. There's a big push to name it for Bruce Van Wyck when he
Right.
died, but yet the momentum was not high enough to actually make that happen. So we've stayed with Foxcroft Avenue. I think George was a little bit different though. Bruce certainly added a lot to making Foxcroft Avenue there, but George was really the driver for Raleigh Street Extension. So even though I realize you view it the other way, I hope the city does consider something like that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your opinion. I do. I think it's something. I think it's something that had been done for. It has always been one of the cases that we've always done. You know, we've named things. I believe that. I think it's also a generational thing, and I believe that. And I don't speak for the next generations or my son's generations, but that is getting less and less common. They don't want things named after, I go to, even stadiums and stuff like that are starting to
Get away from that.
You know.
Well, you got to buy your way into a stadium name.
And like, for example, you got Coburn Field, and now my son and my daughter know who Coburn was, but they know who Dave Walker is. So then that's the other part, and then I don't mean it in a mean heart, because that's not where I come from. I have just had a pretty straight stance that, as far as my vote, my thing is, I do not support anything being named after people.
I can respect that.
Yeah, and I can too. However, there's exceptions to exceptions, and certainly Raleigh Street Extension, the tie between that and George's effort to make it happen was certainly unique. So,
So let's change course a little bit, Jason. Talk a little bit. I need to understand what portion of the pools, the pickleball courts that the city is funding specifically in adjacent to what Parks and Rec is doing. Because you hear comments every time there's a rainstorm, which there have been a lot, that the new pickleball courts are underwater. And so what's the financial breakdown of, for example, the pools, the pickleball, that kind of thing?
So our budget with Parks and Recs, other than what we give additional, is with our hotel motel percentage of the tax is where they get, and then additional revenue comes to them depending on, like Lambert, we've given $100,000, $10,000, things like that, to one-time money, or some even like Lambert has been a repetitive thing. The pickleball courts, we gave a portion of the total. The county gave the property, because the property was also, the parking lot is their property, even though it's inside the city, and then it's in the floodway. And so the operation of that would go into their operational budget, which is tied to their the hotel motel tax. And of course, I know that they're also floating the idea of a
Levy.
Which I know last time it did not pass.
That was many years ago.
Yeah, Parks and Rec, I sat on that committee. Parks and Rec, it has to be, it's a 60%
Correct.
as opposed to, it's a super majority, not a simple majority.
Schools is 50, and this would be 60. Now, Joe Burton was in yesterday, and obviously with the impact fees, those can only be used for capital projects in growth areas. The purpose of the levy, when you talk to Joe, is for the operational expenses that Parks and Rec needs. I'm not sure during a midterm election if that's the appropriate time to ask for a levy or not, because that tends to be a different voting block than a general election. But, Jason, in regards to the continued expansion of Parks and Rec, and then the need for additional operating expenses, the more land you have to take care of, the more equipment you need, the more people that you need, is it going to be a matter of the city and the county having to kick in even more money, or are you satisfied that the hotel motel tax money is enough to really realistically fund their budget and growth needs?
It's not realistic to fund growth. That's a simple answer to that. The only question that you would have is, obviously we know we have need. Being a little bit more leaning towards libertarian, I believe that sometimes private sector and private money has to hopefully offset some of the need. We haven't seen a large amount of private money coming in to build a track. My son's a distance runner, so I haven't seen a track company come in and build a track to do youth sports, stuff like that. I think that there's a balance to that, because one of the things I think that is super important is we keep on talking about levies, we keep on talking about impact fees, we keep on talking about raising costs in the grocery store, we keep on talking about this. And I know that this is not a new concept whatsoever, but affordability for the residents in Berkeley County is becoming a real challenge. It has been an issue. Our water and sewer rates, tomorrow we're gonna approve, it's the first portion of it, but at the end of the day it's gonna be 40%. In 3 years, it's 40% increase. That those are decisions for people that are not going to be, we always use the, older people not being able to afford their medicine. I think it's going to be to the point where I'm not even sure your younger people are going to be able to afford their water bill. And I know that we're still lower on that. And, then you throw in another levy, school levy and that. I know, other than if they've adjusted or stuff, I know they were projecting that, and I don't have the answer why, but I know like the 4 high schools, only Martinsburg is growing in population next year. All of the other 3 schools all lose population. It's not something that they like to come out with a lot. It's small. It's a small, it's a small drop. It's like 10, 20. But we have to figure out a way to make affordability a real thing. And impact fees, everybody likes to throw impact fees around because the average person that owns their house isn't necessarily going to think they feel that. But let me tell you, we are feeling it, where I've gotten probably 10 to 15 calls over the last 2 months is evaluations on their property values. I have one lady who's lived in her house for 30 years. Her evaluation, she's just not be able to homestead because of her age. She is paying $300 more a year in property taxes because the adjustment of what the assessor has adjusted her value at.
But if I can, those adjustments are not arbitrary. They're based upon the area itself. So by comparison.
They're arbitrary 100%.
Well, I don't think so.
Oh yeah, there's numbers that absolutely there's disparities with the valuations that you couldn't even sell it. It's supposed to be 80%. There's valuations that are way over 80% of the value of the property. There has been an asserted effort to get those numbers up to make people pay higher rates to get values and money coming in. It's a broken system, and there's been property that have sold for less money than what the property value is supposed to be, 80%.
15 seconds, Jason.
Came in, but at the end of the day, affordability. We got real issues.
Let's pick this up in another visit. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming in. City Councilman Jason Baker from Ward 5. And we stop here for a timeout.